So again, these are live pictures coming from the Great Hall of the People of President Xi and President Trump right there, walking side by side along the red carpet up to the steps here for this very, very...
From WBRNRadio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network, BR on the World, our international affairs program. The title of the episode today is The People's Republic Welcomes President Trump. President Trump was officially welcomed to the People's Republic of China. President Xi Jinping was there, and they had a 21-gun salute to President Trump and a warm relations. We'll use the BBC here, and then the Xinhua as the official Xinhua is the official Chinese news agency, and also we'll go to Reuters. Let me just quickly review what the BBC has to say. U.S. leader strikes warm tone with Xi Jinping. The president had lavished praise, DJ Trump, on the Chinese leader Xi Jinping in a marked contrast to his previous criticism of China's flashpoint issues in Korea and in trade. He also urged President Xi to work very hard on persuading the Republic of Korea to denuclearize. On trade surplus, President Trump surprised many when he said he didn't blame China for taking advantage. China said it will lower market entry barriers to some sectors, and the president spoke warmly there. He's in the Chinese capital as part of a four-nation Asian tour. The two leaders talked early on Thursday after a grand welcome there, as we just reported. Deals make worth $250 billion. That is 190 billion pounds were announced. Though it's unclear how much the figures include past deals and potential deals. That is from the Minister of State Tillerson. Discussions on how to deal with the problems in Korea were there, and DJ Trump said China could fix the problem of Korea's nuclear program easily and quickly. He's dreaming there. And let's see what else. He poured praise on President Xi since arriving in Beijing. You are a very special man. Well, DJ Trump knows how to, as they say, pour it on, because he got his 21-gun salute. The Chinese leadership doesn't normally give 21-gun salutes. Ceremony, U.S. and Chinese business types signed the deals. And yeah, even here, 1 year on and 6,000 miles from the campaign trail, the audience couldn't quite believe what they were hearing. No doubt about that. But things do soften. Let's go to Reuters here. This is the $250 billion deal. Involved some of the largest manufacturers in the U.S. President, again, Xi Jinping signing ceremony with the Boeing Corporation, General Electric, the chip giant Qualcomm, sealed lucrative multi-million-dollar deals. This is truly a miracle from the Commerce Minister, Xi. Said at the briefing, $250 billion has underscored how keen DJ Trump is to be seen addressing the trade deficit, including unfettered access to the Chinese market, cybersecurity, and the growing presence of the Chinese ruling Communist Party in foreign affair firms there. So, in other words, from the American Chamber of Commerce in China, a strong, vibrant, bilateral economic relation between the two countries. Tech companies like Facebook and Google are mostly out of the are blocked out of China. Ford and GM must operate through, of course, joint ventures. That is something that's followed in many, many situations. Some huge deals were announced. A 20-year, $883.7 billion investment in a Chinese Energy Investment Corporation is in the shale gas development and chemical processing project in West Virginia, a major economic producing state, energy producing state that voted heavily for DJ Trump. It marked the first overseas investment for the newly formed China Energy, which formed from a merger of China Xinhua Group and the country's largest coal producer and another Chinese utility. So they'll be in West Virginia. There's been a trend here. Evidently, DJ Trump is rewarding communities that voted for him. That's not unusual at all. Qualcomm signed non-binding agreement worth $12 billion with Xiaomi and Veo. Three Chinese headset. We've used their headset makers. Long-standing relationship with Qualcomm. The chip maker announcing a deal with the state-run Chinese aviation supplier holding company to sell 300 Boeing jets with a valuation of $37 billion there. So interesting to see how many of these are a part of agreement, part purchase order, repackaged. Beijing is a master of selling the same agreement 10 times. They have mastered in this. The action on the ground will be what is actually going on. Generally, the sense is this is it's all is a good thing, and that's great. It's from a lawyer-based Gentry said in Shanghai, who attended the trade delegation. So they were all there. Let's go to Xinhua Agency. This is the official Chinese agency where we were able to move on much of the today's events here, and the video part that we have at the last will be part of this coverage, and we'll go here to let me get to Xinhua, and big headline here, China focus. President Xi hosts Trump with iconic Chinese culture. You'll hear that. This is from November the 8th. It was yesterday. President Xi Jinping and his wife Ping Lang invited the president, DJ Trump, and Melania Trump to the Palace Museum, also known as the Forbidden City, after the U.S. president started his state business visit. That was on Wednesday afternoon. Xi and BEIJING welcomed the guests the afternoon at the Hall of the Embalmed Treasures in the southwest corner of the Forbidden City. President Xi gave a warm welcome to Trump and expressed gratitude for the hospitality of the family at Mar-a-Lago State. And you'll hear that in the U.S. It's in Florida. Xi briefed Trump on China's current economic and social development, as well as important achievements of a landmark 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, CPC. And President Xi highlighted Chinese skills, said her performance deserved an A. I guess. Anyway, this was built in the 1915. The Hall of the Embodied Treasures feature Western styles in former imperial compound. It was once used to store antiques, but now serves as an exhibit hall for the museum's history. And in front of the Hall of Supreme Harmony there, pictures, of course, were taken there. Tenhaden is one of the largest wood structures in China, and the largest hall in the Forbidden City of the Emperor Ming, and that was 1368 to 1644. So they had tea there, etc., while they were in the Forbidden City, the former residence of the Chinese imperial families during the Ming and dynasties, is a national landmark and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. On we go. Now, this is more from Xinhua. Let's see, we don't have to go over here. Some of these are videos that we already have here, and we won't need to elaborate on those. Major consensus reached at a summit. Now, this is on the 9th of November. The Chinese President Xi Jinping, anyway, visiting with for the President DJ Trump, reached extensive and important consensus on the development of China-U.S. relations. That's according to the Vice Foreign Minister, Xi. The following were highlights of consensus about the two sides should do: have a broad common interest and important responsibility for protecting world peace, stability, and prosperity. Display strategic and leading roles of head of state diplomacy in developing bilateral relations. 3, continue close contact through phone conversation, letters, meetings, and I assume through Twitter. Exchange views on major issues of common concern in a timely manner. Give full play to 4 high-level dialogue platforms: the diplomacy security dialogue, the comprehensive economic dialogue, the law enforcement and cybersecurity dialogue, and the social and people-to-people dialogue. Enhance macro policy coordination concerning fiscal, monetary, and exchange rate policies. Keep communications and coordination on domestic structural reform and global economic governments. Step up communications on increasing imports from the U.S. and review policies of foreign investment involving national security concerns. Sustainably ease market access to China financial markets such as banking, security, and funds, and insurance industry in accordance with Chinese timetable roadmap. Reduce tariffs on automobiles gradually and properly by the Chinese side. Reinforce exchange and dialogue at various levels within the two militaries. Strengthen cooperation in combating cybercrime and protecting the internet. Preventing each other from becoming a paradise of fugitives. I didn't know China had that many fugitives. Anyway, enhance law enforcement cooperation on drug control and the spread of new psychoactive substances. Strengthen protection of people and agencies in other countries. Stick to the Chinese one policy that excludes the renegade province of Taiwan. Enroll more students in each other. Welcome extension of U.S.-Chinese agreement on cooperation in science and technology, cooperating on the prevention and treatment of AIDS and emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases. dedicated to promoting a peace, stability, and prosperity in the Asian region, safeguard international nuclear non-proliferation regimes, and promote complete and verifiable and irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and not to accept the nuclear status of the Democratic Republic of Korea. Long order there. Expand the cooperation on fighting terrorism on a two-way and mutually beneficial basis, and offer assistance to Iraq. Stand by the Afghan-owned and Afghan-led way to realize a peaceful solution, a peaceful reconstruction of Afghanistan. Cooperate in nuclear safety, crack down on nuclear smuggling, and fight nuclear terrorism. Those are no doubt goals that will be well received by many. Just make sure there are new headlines from Xinhua. We usually rely upon them for the information coming forward here. Nonetheless, a headline just came up here. U.S. should be partner, not U.S.-China, not rivals. That has been a long theme of relationship between the two parties. Again, this is actually here on the 10th. We one day pass in China. China should be partners, not rivals. This is from Beijing. Be good for each other and the whole world. That's from President Xi Jinping. He hosting a state dinner in the Great Hall of the People Thursday evening. President Xi said he believes the challenge of bilateral relationships were limited, but potentials were limitless. DJ Trump agreed on that point. The two countries will be able to open a new page of bilateral ties and make new contributions to the future of humankind once they pursue it firmly and persuasively. From President Xi said, China and the U.S. have now developed into a community of deep, intertwined, and shared interests. The two are sharing more with a broader interest and a bigger and heavier responsibility in safeguarding world peace and protecting common development. Expressing gratitude to the warm welcome from President Xi Jinping, President Trump said he believes a cooperation between the U.S. and China would benefit the two sides and bring peace, prosperity, and security to the world. And the president, DJ Trump, even had his granddaughter, Arnabella Kirchner, singing in Mandarin, reciting ancient Chinese poems. I imagine that went over well for them. We'll move on now to our canned, as we call it, a presentation from the Xinhua Agency. This is official videotape. And there's about a 15-minute or so welcoming there where DJ Trump is given his 21-gun salute. Prior to that, a number of journalists in China described various aspects of the Xi Jinping and DJ Trump relationship and a relationship with the U.S. It's quite entertaining. It's something, and the reason we're presenting this is something that you don't normally hear, particularly in North America and across the U.S. This is part of the reason we came up originally about almost 7-8 years ago with the idea of BR on the world. We didn't have another name at that time. There could have been obviously better names, but this was because we had our political program, which is still running almost 10 years now, at Boston Red. So we just said BR on the world, and the idea was bringing the world to Boston and the rest of the nation, here, so we use this, and we have used it in the past to cover many different things. There are over 50 shows available there where we have spotlighted the funeral of Baba Nelson Mandela, the conflict, assassination, and murder in Libya of the late Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, the head of state there, and various other people, openings of the UN, that sort of thing. We even had a 10-minute program that basically ran every day where we recapped world events. We'll probably start more of that. We have another episode coming up. We had one, and invite you to listen to it, on Catalonia. And we'll have more of that from El País and El Mundo, these are Spanish newspapers, and also from the Spanish channel. I have to look that one up. I think it is, what is it, 34 something? I have to write these down sometime. Well, I guess we don't see it. But anyway, it is a Spanish news channel that is live, and we do some audio there. And El País, is a more progressive newspaper in Madrid, and we get it. And El Mundo, not much so, but we have to use a translator on that. And then we fall back on the BBC, the Guardian, and various outlets that cover Catalonia, and particularly the movement there, evidently in Belgium. The Prime Minister there has been released, I believe. So anyway, we'll have more information on that. But nonetheless, for a WBRN Radio, Boston Red Network, on the 9th of November, this has been The People of China Welcome President Trump. Good day. And we'll also be back later tonight in North America with Friday Jobber. That's our magazine program. We have it each Friday, every Friday morning. Normally, we'll have it. And sport. One of the things we'll also bring here to BR on the World, we'll start covering football, soccer. We do a little bit of that on Boston Red. And over the weekend, we have the week that was, which wraps up the week and also does something on currents. On a Monday morning, the Monday Morning Quarterback, which covers the American National Basketball Association, and we work covering the Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball is over. We'll have something, obviously, from hockey. We'll have college football. We're boycotting the National Football League. So we'll have those things in there, and we're starting a new program, I'm not sure what's coming on, called All About Sports. We'll talk about the business of sports.
This is Xinhua Special. I'm Roisin Tennant.
Since 2013, the presidents of China and the US have met several times.
Meetings between China and US leaders are always important events, but not always grand affairs in formal conference rooms. This photo was taken on Xi's first visit to the US as Chinese president. So, Da-Wei, you took this photo. Can you tell me a little bit about that moment?
I remember it was June 2013. President Xi traveled to California to meet President Obama at the Sunnylands. There were no welcoming ceremonies, no red carpets, no 21-gun salute, and they didn't wear ties. It's quite different from what we normally see in the Great Hall of the People or the White House. It really impressed me. They walked on the grass, talking and smiling. The sky was blue. The light was perfect, and the burger was very beautiful. As they passed, I took the chance to capture the moment.
In the 1970s, ping pong played a significant role in China-US relations. a US ping pong team visited China in 1971. Then, in 1972, Richard Nixon visited China. This signaled the restoration of China-US relations, which had been cut for more than 2 decades. One might say that the globe was set in motion by this tiny ball. Since 1972, the leaders of China and US have had more and more deep yet informal meetings, just like they had at Sunnylands. In fact, Xi and Obama met again the next year, this time at Zhongnanhai, the area of Beijing which houses the country's top leadership.
It was evening, November the 11th, 2014. The meeting went on much longer than scheduled. They talked about almost 5 hours, I think. Usually, talks between two countries stick to bilateral ties and specific matters. But this was quite different. The two leaders had an in-depth exchange on fundamental issues, including managing state affairs.
A year after the exchange at Zhongnanhai, the two leaders met again, this time at the White House. That crucial meeting resulted in a joint presidential statement on climate change and a 49-item outcome list.
I remember it was on September the 24th. The two presidents, President Xi and President Obama, they walked down Pennsylvania Avenue from the White House and talked their way to the Blair House, which was a state guest house of the United States government. And just like at Sunnylands, the two presidents didn't wear ties, and their meeting lasted about 3 hours. During that meeting, President Xi actually told President Obama about China's views on peaceful development as well as on global governance. He also talked about China's stance on sovereignty. Well, he made it abundantly clear that cooperation can bring mutual benefits, but confrontation can only hurt both sides. That kind of in-depth communication, as President Xi puts it, can help guide and invigorate the China-US ties.
This song is Mo Li Hua, or Jasmine Flower. Actually, this ballad is related to another important moment in China-US relations. In April, Trump met with Xi at the Mar-a-Lago resort. Now, Trump must have been aware of the gravity of the occasion as he made his preparations to receive Xi and his wife.
About 30 minutes before President Xi and his wife Peng Liyuan arrived at Mar-a-Lago resort, Trump's family was already in the living room, and Trump was checking the room decorations himself, and he asked the staff to make some adjustments, and he even did some of that himself. Later, Trump's grandchildren sang Jasmine Flower, a traditional Chinese folk song, and recited some Chinese poetries. The Mar-a-Lago meeting was more like a gathering between old friends. President Xi spent altogether 7 hours in 2 days discussing bilateral and global issues and building rapport with President Trump. One of the achievements of the meeting was the establishment of 4 high-level dialogue mechanisms.
China and the US can and must cooperate on many fronts. After all, the relationship between the two countries affects not just the Chinese and the American people, but also the world.
It's a successful and historic visit. The meeting between me and President Trump set the tone and print and laid a solid foundation for the future development of China-United States relationship, and we will achieve more results and bring more benefit to the people, to both countries and around the world. Thank you.
我认为中美关系事关两国人民的福祉。 也关乎世界的和平、繁荣、稳定。对中美两国来说，合作是唯一正确的选择，共赢才能通向更好的未来。
Very strong symbolic role, in this visit, I think. So the visit, I hope that this visit can lay, can have like a keynote visit, to lay the foundation for the future. I don't know how many years Trump will in the White House. At least 3 years, right? For the development.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt now, but you're now watching the live picture of the motorcades of the presidents driving down the Chang'an Avenue. That's the biggest thoroughfare in Beijing, in front of the Tiananmen Square. That's the Forbidden City you are watching right there. Both presidents had a tour in the Forbidden City last afternoon, I should say.
Yeah, these are stunning pictures here. All these sites are very well known all over the world. It's interesting seeing this street, which is usually clogged with traffic. It's right next to Tiananmen Square, which is a huge tourist attraction filled with thousands of people. It's interesting watching this now all cleared out for this very grand ceremony where President Xi will welcome President Trump to the Great Hall of the People there, which is the seat of power for Chinese government. As our guest just mentioned, it was just last month that President Xi delivered his very long, grand speech to the Communist Party, the People's Congress there, and is now emerging here to meet President Trump.
All right.
On the front steps.
Yeah, you're now watching the President of People's Republic of China, President Xi Jinping, alongside with First Lady, Madam Peng Liyuan, stepping out, just emerged from the building of the Great Hall of the People. They're stepping down the red carpet. They're there to welcome the United States President Donald Trump. This is a state welcome ceremony. Protocol is very important in the Chinese governance and diplomacy. If you're familiar with Chinese culture, and such events are usually carefully choreographed down to the smallest detail. And China obviously want to send out a message that U.S. President Donald Trump is well respected here. And whether that will play out, into China's advantage, whether that will accomplish on a diplomatic view standpoint, that remains to be seen, though.
Yeah, as you mentioned here, everything is perfectly choreographed. This is really beginning almost to the second on time here, as we see this big ceremony unfold here on live television broadcast all over the world. The Chinese government has said repeatedly that they are going out of their way to make President Trump feel honored and feel welcome in reciprocation for the way that the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, was welcomed in Florida soon after President Trump's inauguration. Apparently that trip made a very big impact on President Xi. And these are the pictures here. President Trump leaving the limousine to shake hands and greet the Chinese president and his wife.
Yeah, let's listen in for a moment.
Vice Chairman of the Chinese People's Republic, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, 外交部长 Foreign Minister, 国家发改委主任 Minister of National Development and Reform Commission, 财政部长 Minister of Finance.
So as we're watching here, President Trump being introduced to all the different ministers here in China on the red carpet. As we keep on saying, China has rolled out the red carpet, literally and figuratively, to welcome him and his wife.
Yeah, and President Trump is being given this ceremonial reception in front of the Great Hall of the People. He was being introduced to the senior officials, including Foreign Minister and the Minister of Reform and Development Commission, and all the other big names in the political sector and also the business sector as well.
Thank you.
And this is
and that right there is the ambassador, right there, the American ambassador who just shook his hand to China, Edward Branstad.
Now Rex Tillerson up there. So now as the U.S. officials being introduced to President Xi.
The President, Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations. Assistant to the President, National Security Advisor.
We're expecting this ceremony to take about 20 minutes or so.
Assistant to the President, Senior Advisor for Policy. Assistant to the President, Chief of Staff for First Lady. Assistant to the President, Director of Communications. Assistant to the President, Staff Secretary. Assistant to the President, Director of Social Media. Advisor. Assistant to the President, Press Secretary. General Counsel.
So if you're just joining us, you're watching live pictures of the welcoming ceremony in front of the Great Hall of the People. This is an important day, obviously, where the world will be watching how the bilateral ties between China and the U.S. would move forward from here, arguably the most important bilateral relationships in the world, and whether some solutions can be found to some of the most pressing security issues in the region.
Yeah, this is President Trump's third stop on his 12-day, five-nation Asian summit.
All right, let's listen in.
统阁下，中国人民解放军仪仗队列队完毕，请您检阅。
now watching President Xi Jinping together with U.S. President Donald Trump walking along the red carpet to inspect military guard here. And the welcome ceremony in President Donald Trump's name is being held as we speak outside the Great Hall of the People. The military band had played the national anthem of the People's Republic of China and the United States, and President Trump is now inspecting the honor of guard with his Chinese counterpart now.
Yeah, China's pulling out all the stops for this visit. They've called it a state visit. Plus, they are putting on a full show. We know how how President Trump definitely likes the attention, and without question, this is designed to show China's respect to President Trump and to try to forge a very long-lasting, positive relationship.
Yeah, and this is their third face-to-face meeting. The first one was at Mar-a-Lago in the United States.
And this song right here is actually specially chosen too. This is The Stars and Stripes Forever, which is a John Philip Sousa march penned back in 1896. The fact that the Chinese government is having this song played with American children waving American and Chinese flags outside is of special significance right there.
Yeah. And today's meeting is really after, last afternoon's meeting in a more relaxed setting. They were speaking to each other in a more relaxed setting, which kind of...
they had tea, they watched an opera.
Yeah, and smoothed the relationship a little bit.
And now clearly they're trying to set the mood of excitement, of energy, of positive feelings here.
That's right.
It's interesting to watch all this unfold here for the American president and, of course, the Chinese president, too. Especially considering that, President Trump is not enjoying incredible popularity ratings back at home. But here, President Xi is, without question, rolling out that red carpet as they walk down here with the children singing and dancing there, greeting the two leaders.
Yeah, they are waving these miniature flags, States flag and Chinese flag, jumping up and down.
We saw one of the children earlier, which I thought was hilarious. The kid that did the kung fu moves there.
Really got the move there.
In a suit to boot. And so, pretty impressive. And now, obviously, President Trump enjoying all this, greeting the children, saying hello. Yeah, it's a big ceremony, a big moment for both leaders here.
Yeah, quite an elaborate official ceremony right there
And after this will be serious business. The two leaders are going to go inside the Great Hall of the People, where they have some thorny issues to discuss. It's not just the DPRK issue, but also trade, the economy. There's a lot on the agenda, so they will meet behind closed doors and spend more time together, and then emerge later on this afternoon for a series of events and high-profile meetings.
Yeah, some of the issues, most pressing issues, as our guest mentioned a little earlier, would be the DPRK's nuclear program and the trade issues between the two countries. It'll be interesting to watch how U.S. President Donald Trump is going to change and adjust to a different audience now for the Chinese. He was just traveling from South Korea, giving this really big speech on the DPRK problem in front of National Assembly there in Seoul. And now he is in China. So how he will adjust that tone to his Chinese counterpart, that'll be interesting to watch.
We've seen a lot of changes in President Trump's tones over the months. Yeah. We saw during the campaign he was very harsh and very critical of China. Once he got inaugurated, that tone has changed considerably. He describes President Xi as a good friend. He says they have a warm relationship, although they disagree on several big issues. DPRK is just one of them. And so we'll see what kind of impact this meeting has between the two leaders over the months and weeks ahead as they try to tackle some of these these thornier issues.
Yeah. Let me just bring our guests back in. Mr. Donnan, Mr. Trump actually spoke highly about Chinese president, giving personal praises. I'm sorry, I have to pause for a little bit to let our viewers to
kind of
take in all the
image.
Yeah. was just going back to the question before, Mr. Dunham. I was saying Mr. Trump has been given these high personal praises to Mr. Xi. I'm quoting his words. He says, Mr. Xi is a powerful man. I happen to think he's a very good person. But he also says this won't stop him from getting tough with China on certain issues. What is he prepared to do, and how is he planning to do that?
Well, I think having said that he likes him and he trusts him, it makes it possible for him to criticize the policies of China without making it personal. I mean, I know that's one thing. If you go back to Hillary Clinton had some problems with the Chinese government and Chinese people because of the tone, and so her criticisms became personal. I think this is the way you negotiate. You say, I trust you, but we disagree on this. And I think that trade is thorny, but I'm interested in what happens on some foreign policy issues like in Pakistan and India or the South China Sea, because that's where personal relationships become very important, where there's not a deliverable in the same way. But I do think that behind closed doors, they will talk about what they want. The reality is hard bargaining and seeing if there is any common ground where they can move forward.
There's a lot to consider there. Let's take a moment here to listen to some of the music and pageantry put on display for the two presidents. So again, these are live pictures coming from the Great Hall of the People of President Xi and President Trump right there, walking side by side along the red carpet up to the steps here for this very, very special welcome to President Trump to China.
That is right, and they are heading back to the Great Hall of the People where they're expected to have closed-door meetings. I've been told they're going to have 2 sessions of closed-door meetings, and they're about to deliver remarks after the first session, and when that happens, we'll obviously bring that to you live as well.
And just to give you guys at home some perspective here, this is a very formal welcome ceremony that China considers its highest regard for a visiting head of state. This is not necessarily normal. This is not what a foreign leader or a foreign president might necessarily get. China really is putting on a show to make sure that President Trump feels welcome and to build a good relationship between the two leaders.
That's right. As you said, the highest level for a state leader's welcoming ceremony for the 21 gun salute that's been given to President Trump. That is the highest level of military honor in this kind of setting, reserved only for heads of state. He inspected the military guard. You know, he was welcomed by Chinese American school children waving Chinese and U.S. flags. It was really
this trip
a
has
ceremony
been and this trip has been peppered with all sorts of unprecedented events. The fact that the American president, Donald Trump, had dinner inside the Forbidden City yesterday with President Xi, and also a very rare special moment that is not usually enjoyed with a visiting head of state.